Hey everyone, so today's video is a review that I've been looking forward to doing for a while now, and that is Salt to the Sea by Ruta Sepetys. I read her first book, Between Shades of Grey, a few years ago and really loved it, and so when I heard she was releasing her third book, which was also around the World War II era, I was very excited to get my hands on it, and lucky for me, Penguin Teen did offer the book to me, so I have to tell you guys, I accepted this book from Penguin Teen in exchange for an honest review that also does enter me in a giveaway, so full disclosure for you guys, but let's move on to the book. This book follows four perspectives: Florian, Joanna, Amelia, and Alfred. And it is January 1945. They are in East Prussia and the Soviets are slowly closing in on them. As you may have guessed, their paths do cross in this book, and they cross because of this one thing that they're all sort of heading towards, and that is escape from East Prussia, basically. So Germany has finally decided to evacuate all their refugees because the Soviets, as I mentioned, are coming, and people have both heard and experienced the atrocities of what the Soviet soldiers are doing, so they're all really scared, and they're all trying to flee while they still can. They're heading to a specific port where there are a number of ships that will sail them over out of East Prussia to Germany. Now, the reason this is called Salt to the Sea is because they are all connected to this one ship called the Wilhelm Gustloff, which is the ship, a huge ship that will take thousands of refugees from East Prussia over to Germany. The Wilhelm Gustloff is the single greatest maritime disaster in the history of the world. So obviously this entire novel is leading up to something very, very dark. So you know this, the characters don't know this, but it makes for a very exciting read. What I love about Ruta Sepetys' books is that she has really great characters, both main characters and side characters, but they're also just really meaty. That might sound a little weird, but what I mean by that is that there's a lot of history in here, and even things that you might not realize that were researched have been researched, and it just makes for such an immersive, wonderful experience because I really love learning. This is historical fiction, and so although you might be following characters who are not real, their stories are very real, and the disaster of the Wilhelm Gustloff is very real as well. When I began reading this book, I did find it a bit difficult to get into because you're following four perspectives, so you're constantly jumping between people, and when you don't know the characters yet and you haven't really figured out the flow of the story, it's a little weird, kind of off-putting. And so the beginning, I wasn't loving it. I was having a hard time remembering who people were. But the other day, I sat down after reading the first, 40 or 50 pages and ended up reading 3/4 of the book in one sitting. Because now that I had the characters sort of set in my head a bit, I was really able to pick up the story and get engrossed in all of the stuff that they were going through, and really starting to like all the relationships that were developing because the characters are interconnected. I ended up getting very engrossed in the story to the point where I was, my heart was beating fast when certain things were happening because they're walking through East Prussia in January and there's bombs being dropped and people are dying, and she certainly does not hold back on details. That's another thing that I do enjoy, is this is a YA novel, but it is a dark one at points. She does not hold back on details about how people died, how people were killed, and it's important to know these things because they did happen. Although the beginning was a bit bumpy for me, I began to really love these characters. I cared about them. I wanted to know what was going to happen to them. So by the time I got to the end of the novel, I was just like, whew, completely blown over, I guess you could say. I didn't cry. I know a lot of people have cried, but it was just so intense. Really great, but intense. I ended up giving this book 4.5 out of 5 stars. I really enjoy historical fiction. I appreciated that aspect of it. I loved learning about the Wilhelm Gustloff and just what happened to this ship that I had never heard about. The characters were very strong characters. You don't know much about them in the beginning, but slowly layers of them are peeled back. You learn more about them, what happened to them, how they ended up where they are, and then the relationships that they develop with each other and secondary characters. I enjoyed that part immensely. The part that, took away from it a little bit was the beginning. It was kind of slow, I guess you could say, but it was mostly because I didn't really understand who everybody was yet, and because it's just constantly jumping between characters. It does take a little bit before you figure out who everybody is. It takes a little bit to get into, but once you get past that point, 40 or 50 pages, it becomes fantastic. I would highly recommend this book. I am somebody who could go pick up a 500-page book about the Wilhelm Gustloff and enjoy reading it. But there are people out there who wouldn't want to do that. This book is great because it is historical fiction, but it's YA, and you have characters, you know, ranging from 6 years old to probably 60 or 70, and you learn about what happened without feeling like you're trying to read a textbook. And for people who don't want to read a 500-page nonfiction book, this is perfect. You learn a lot of great things, and you learn the truth of what happened, because I feel like everybody knows the story of the Titanic or the Lusitania, those maritime disasters. I'd never heard of the Wilhelm Gustloff, and I consider myself somebody who knew a bit about World War II. So to be able to read this book was great, and then to know that it will be accessible to so many people who wouldn't necessarily pick up a nonfiction book is even better. If you have been thinking about reading this book, I would definitely recommend picking it up. You're going to discover characters that you really like, you're going to learn a lot, and you're going to probably get very invested in the story and maybe even cry at the end. So if you guys have read Salt to the Sea, let me know what you thought of it in the comments down below. As always, all of the links are in the doobly-doo. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you later.